And now they're like, what do I do now? What do I do now? Everything that I used to do doesn't work. Like money can't solve this. I can't buy my happiness.
Hmm.
And so it's about allowing those feelings when they start to come up, sit with them and allow them to come up and allow yourself to feel them. And it's very counterintuitive for most people.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Boom Vision. Today's guest is my good friend, Jonathan Liu. We're going to dive into the topic about emotions and intuition. You'll definitely want to tune into today's episode. Let's cue the intro. Welcome to the Boom Vision podcast. I am your host, Benjamin Ye. This show is about giving you the perspectives and framework on how to gain clarity and unlock your hidden breakthroughs. It's time for you to live an extraordinary life that you design. Let's get to work. Who's your friend who likes to play bing bong, bing bong? His rocket makes you yell, hooray, bing bong, bing bong. That quote was from Bing Bong and Joy in Inside Out, which is a movie by Pixar. That whole movie, particularly that scene, had me bawling and filled with emotion. I really recommend you guys watching that movie. Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 8 of the Boom Vision podcast. Today's show, we're going to talk about emotions and why emotions is so important to be able to activate your intuition. I'm excited to share today's episode because I interview an old friend that has helped my journey in recalibrating my IA, internal alternator. I first met Jonathan about 9 years ago, and it wasn't until this year that we recently reconnected after I launched Boom Vision. It's funny how life works that way. When your energy changes as you evolve, you attract people with similar vibrations. In terms of Jonathan's bio, Jonathan Liu is a soul freedom coach and specializes in helping entrepreneurs and business professionals remove or dissolve energetic and emotional blocks so that they can achieve their goals and manifest their dreams faster without hustling harder or working longer hours. Jonathan began his healing journey in 2009 after experiencing a spiritual and emotional awakening in a theta healing session. Since then, he has been learning and evolving as a transformational coach and healer, helping hundreds of clients overcome their emotional blocks and feeling peace, joy, and fulfillment in their lives. His mission is to help people realize that they have unlimited power and potential from within and can create their reality by going within themselves and remembering who they truly are. Jonathan lives in Austin, Texas, and loves to travel, be with nature, and exploring different cultures and people alongside his wife Bridget and his daughter Nyla. I'm excited to reconnect with my friend Jonathan, so let's dive right in. Jonathan, welcome to the Boom Vision podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ben. I feel honored to be here and pleasure to help serve your audience today if I can.
Thank you so much. So I'd love to start with your origin story, Jonathan. How does your story start?
So I grew up in Southern California in the San Gabriel Valley area. And growing up, my parents they valued education a lot. You know, my dad went to MIT, my mom went to like Taiwan University. And so they valued a lot of education growing up, and they ended up doing the corporate world and retired, and they were very successful. And so they wanted me to study a lot as a kid, right? And that's what I did. And they even sent me to like a private boarding school. But the one thing I didn't learn about at home or in school was emotions and how to deal. That was something we just never talked about. And so in high school, I had a breakup, a falling out with a girl I really liked. And I all of a sudden stopped caring about grades, right? I stopped caring about school. I wanted to be popular and I wanted to do all these things. And so I started getting in trouble at school. And eventually I told my parents, I don't want to go to this private school anymore. I'm going to go to public school. And I started getting involved with a whole different crowd. You know, I started getting involved with drugs and alcohol and violence and gangs, and it just escalated. And eventually that led to a lot of violence. Well, not a lot of, I'll say it started with, fist fights, and then people were getting stabbed. And then there was like people getting shot and killed. And it just led me to jail and prison. And I just kind of got stuck there for a while. And then in 2008, I got out. I was off parole, and my mom introduced me to something called theta healing, which I had no idea what it was. She said, hey, she had a friend that was doing it, she could help. And so I go to this session and I end up speaking to this lady. And somehow, then I don't know how this, she got me to talk about a friend of mine who was shot and killed. And it was, and I had never told anybody about that. And this session, somehow she brought it out. And immediately, like, I started to feel something come up. And the part that kind of changed everything for me was like her son Derek was also there. And he said, this may be trippy, okay, but he said, hey, I think your friend's here and he wants to let you know something. Like he has a message for you. And in that moment, I felt like I could feel his presence. And he said 4 words that changed my life. He said, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And literally when he said that, like I just broke down. I just broke down crying, and I cried for probably, it felt like 30 minutes, but it was probably like a couple of minutes. And it was just like sobbing and weeping. And man, it was crazy. But afterwards, I felt like 30 pounds lighter. I saw light at the end of the tunnel, because prior to that, I was just drinking and partying and just thought, I'm either going to end up in jail, I'm going to end up dead, or I don't know. I don't have I couldn't foresee anything for my life at that time. So once that happened, after that session, I was invited to go learn this theta healing thing. And I said, okay, sure, let's do it. And that's when I kind of began my journey of healing myself and with even learning or experiencing emotions. And throughout the years, that was 2008 and 2009. And then since then, I've just kind of continued that journey. I've learned other modalities, but I've really started to, I guess, master or specialize in emotions a lot more in the last couple of years. But throughout this journey, I've been helping people with all sorts of things with their belief systems, their anything blocking them, energies, things, any stuck energies, stuck emotions, things of that sort. So that's kind of how I've gotten to this point where I'm at now.
Got it. Jonathan, thank you for being very authentic and sharing kind of your journey, your life journey, where and all the different pivots to where it kind of lead you today, right? And so I think that's a great segue in what would you say is your superpower?
Yeah, so I'd say my superpower is really helping people with their emotions, right? Like that's my kind of superpower. It's helping like dissolve those trapped or stuck emotions that people are not even aware of, like on the conscious level. And I'm also, just really good at pinpointing those specific moments that really have, changed people's lives and helping them really like rewrite that story, recreate that in a way that serves them.
Got it. And I'll say this from a personal experience, Jonathan, is that, I share with my audience in the episode when I talk about intuition and really about emotions and feelings is that when I started my spiritual journey with my wife and, before I was 100% logic based, right? I was very black and white, very, very left brain. It was a theta session with you and Bridget that thanks to you, I was crying like a baby when I watched movies right after. And it was because I was turning off my IA, my internal alternator, and you helped me get rid of that switch to start having emotions flow. And that was really what helped me be able to hone in better on how to trust my intuition. So I really have you and Bridget, Bridget is Jonathan's wife, to thank for that because I was firsthand have experienced it. So 100%, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, right on. And thank you. Yeah, you were one of our, Ruby and you were our first like clients. Yeah, back in the day. That was literally when we first started and you were just going with it.
But you know what? I'll say this to my audience. There was no way I would have known when you just started. That's how effective you were. There's no way. I mean, to me, I felt like as if you were doing it for at least 3 to 5 years. So just your testament to your credit. Just to also educate my audience because the word emotions can mean different things for different people. How would you define emotions? And what are the type of clients have you served in the last several years and also throughout your career It's like a three-part question. And then what's been the most common reason why clients come to you for your help? So let's start with the
Okay.
first one, which is how do you define emotions?
Yeah. So emotions are, to me, there's a couple different definitions I have. Number one is the simple one. It's a feeling, a feeling. Okay. It's simply a feeling, a charge that you feel normally in your body. Okay. That's number one. The second definition I see is I see emotion as energy, right? And I think you mentioned this too, Ben. You say energy in motion. And so that's
Right.
like, that's a big thing because emotion just has to flow. I think people misunderstand emotions as like, hey, some are good, some are bad. Like, oh, when I feel angry and sad, that's not good. That's kind of how we've been conditioned.
Mhm.
And I believe that we are here on this earth to experience it all and to allow ourselves to experience it all without holding it or, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. So let me stuff it down. So, yeah, that's my
Right.
definition of emotion.
Got it.
And let that energy flow.
Awesome. And then in terms of what are the type of clients that you serve?
So there's a couple of different types of clients. So right now I work a lot with people who are having some marriage issues, like or relationship issues.
Mhm.
I help them working one-on-one with them, so not in a couple setting. But also I work with a lot of just kind of entrepreneurs or business owners or real estate professionals, insurance sales people, and a lot of them have this hustle and grind mentality of, hey, 20, like work 24/7, Gary V and 10X and everything, which is great. I think it's great to work hard and take action, but they don't seem to be getting the results that they want.
Mm.
So I help them dig in deep to find out what are those like invisible or emotional or energetic blocks that may be preventing them from achieving what they want quicker and faster. So I help people basically manifest things faster, easier, quicker, with less effort and stress.
Got it. Okay. And I think that also answers the third question, which was that what has been the most common reason why clients come to you for your help? And it sounds like they're driven. I mean, same thing with the Boom Vision audience. They're driven entrepreneurs and professionals, but are they driving to the right place? Somehow they have this reoccurring loop where they might be making strides and having 5 steps forward, but somehow they're always being pushed back 4 steps. And it's like, why? Why is that happening? And most times, not always, but most times it might be, hey, it's that emotion piece. Whether it's because of culture, whether it's your old SOS, right, subconscious operating system, they might have old pre-programming where, oh, when you have bad or negative emotions, just quiet it down, negative, or suppress it. Like, don't let it surface, right?
Right. It's kind of like driving with the e-brake on.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
kind of like you're going, you're stepping on pedal, you're like going here, and it's like, why am I not like you might move forward a little bit, but then it's like they don't get it, and then what happens is, okay, you put that e-brake down, you clear those, and then now you're moving.
yeah. I love it. The analogy I use, because I use the car analogy quite often, is that they might be holding a 1,000-pound luggage in the trunk, which is what's slowing them down. And
Mm.
it doesn't matter if you upgrade your car, that luggage comes with you,
Yeah,
right? It
exactly.
doesn't leave in your camera if you want to upgrade to a Ferrari. It's still going to come with you.
Yep,
And the sooner you can let that go, that in and of itself will make you go faster.
exactly.
Yeah. And so, when we talked before, Jonathan, you mentioned about everyone has 4 bodies. I
Yes.
love for you to share with my audience. What do you mean by the 4 bodies?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 4 like subconscious minds. So usually when we talk about subconscious, we think subconscious mind, right? But there's also other parts that are part of our subconscious, which is there's a subconscious part, our gut, and our physical body. So the 4 bodies are this: you've got your physical body, and then you've got the mind, which is your mental body, like your thoughts. That's where those are at. Your heart is your emotional body. That's where your feelings of anger, fear, sadness, joy, all of those things are in the heart. And then you've got your guts, or I call it the soul body or the intuitive body. And yeah, so those are the 4 bodies. They kind of all interact with each other. They're all connected. It's just we tend to use one more than the other. We kind of go to it, but they're all a team. They're all part of a team, and you want to get them all connected with each other so that you can operate at the smoothest, most optimal, and efficient way possible.
No, I love that because, the visual I see is that it's almost like 4 different gates, and each one gate is subsequent to the other. In most cases, people understand what are the physical exercises when they go to the gym. They know if they work on cardio, they run on the treadmill. If they want to work on a core, they could do sit-ups or specific exercises for it. The entire intention of Boom Vision is to what's the exercises for the mental gym. And there's a physical body, the level one. The second body you're saying was a mind body. Okay, that's where the conscious level is, but our life is ran only 5% with a conscious mind.
Right.
And typically that's only the extent that they only work on is the physical and the mental body, and that's it. And what I'm trying to help people understand and expand is with your imagination, with your voice, with your intuition, activating those three pillars and exercising those three pillars, that allows you to then go one level deeper into your heart body, which is where you're saying the emotion. I use the words IA, the internal alternator, because
Right.
that's what helps transfers the emotions to a different part of your body, or be able to take action. And then what I love about it is that fourth body, which is a soul body or intuition body. Some people think that heart and intuition are, hand in hand, but I like the distinction you're making between the third and the fourth body, because by allowing your emotions to flow, that's how you start being able to manifest a lot easier, be able to start trusting your intuition.
Exactly. And there's kind of that misconception. A lot of people, especially men, right, especially professional entrepreneurial men, because they don't want to let emotions guide them, right? They don't want to let not guide them, but they don't want to let emotions take over. Like they don't want to control them. And they always, like, especially when you're dealing with numbers, like leave the emotion out of it. Right. Like that's what you always hear, which is true.
Hmm.
However, what they also do, I found very successful men as well, is they do kind of have a gut feeling, like when they make those decisions, which is, I believe that's their intuitive. Sometimes they'll call it instinct, but that's their intuitive body and they're following that.
Yeah, no, I make that distinction on my intuition episode, which is, I think it was the fourth episode. Instinct is before thought, because
Right.
we have instincts as human beings, animal instincts, right? Things just kick in where it's just like a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
But intuition is beyond thought. It's,
Mm.
whether you're tapping into your higher self, whether it's coming from your gut, right? That is really a bit different from instinct. So that's another two words I
Yes.
think that are being sometimes used synonymously, but it's
Right.
really different,
Right. It's
right?
good you differentiate that, because yeah, and also even with intuition, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, there's different ways of intuitive abilities. Like some people are clairaudience or clairvoyant, they'll say, which is just means like they some people see more, some people hear more, some
Yeah.
people just know. That's called digital, where they just kind of have this knowing. So intuition comes in many forms.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, absolutely. And I share that too, is that the intention here isn't to convert everyone to energy healing. Right?
Right.
That's not the intention, but rather it's like if you can dust off and hone in on your soul GPS, right? That internal way to help guide you and what direction do you really want to do to make you feel most fulfilled but accomplish what you want to accomplish. The thing is that by dusting off that soul GPS and being able to tune into your intuition, you're going to be able to make better decision making
Absolutely.
intuitively.
Yep.
And it's just, but the question is really just how. What were some action steps that you took to build up your superpower?
So in the very, very beginning, I did something very strange. So I'm considered kinesthetic, meaning I feel things. That's one of my primary ones. And I would get a pen or a pencil and I would just connect to the universe. And I would just say, give me, I would ask a question, give me a message or anything, and my hand would just move. And I was like, whoa. And it wasn't like me doing it, it just do it. And I would just get these messages. I just start writing and these messages would just come through. So I start to build like that intuitive skill. I just did that every day, and it was kind of cool because I was like, "Hey, who am I talking to? Am I talking to some angels?" And I thought, "Oh, cool." And I just would ask some questions, and I didn't think anything of it. Right. So here's the thing with intuition: like make it fun. Like it doesn't have to be like super serious. It doesn't have to be super hard. You just play with it, and there's no right or wrong answer. You can't do anything wrong or right. So that's one. The other way that I built this skill of feeling my emotions, meditation, is honestly like
Mm,
that your Cal method I think is huge, because that first step, that calming, man, like I've done a lot of different meditations, and the one that has kind of helped me the most, I wouldn't say the, yeah, I would say the most effective is something I learned from Kyle Cease, and I hear it also from other gurus, so to speak. But he does this thing where he just sits and he empties the mind, literally allowing yourself to sit and empty the mind, focus on your breath, and allow things to come up.
Yeah, kind of what I share about turning off your wind tunnel,
Yes,
right? So then your thoughts can just naturally float right down to the ground. In that moment of silence and clarity, things will come up. You can, you're
exactly.
able to pick your thoughts. You'll be able, you might hear a different type of voice, whatever it is. Everyone's different. And I shared this before with my audience that whether some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people are more kinesthetic. It's
Right,
just, you
right.
just have to kind of lean in on, well, which one do you gravitate more towards, but give yourself the space to have that clarity so that when you do get those signals, it's coming from your soul, not from your ego.
Yeah, absolutely. And I started when I started, I was very visual, so I would see a lot of things,
Yeah.
and then I started to feel more throughout my
Yeah.
journey. So
Got it. Yeah. And I'll say this that, one exercise for some of the clients that I have, it's like, look, if I feel that they're more visual, because some people might not be able to write things down like the way you do, Jonathan, but what they
right,
can do, for example, is like, look, if you have someone that you want to hire and, you have a job posting and then you got, all these like inbound resumes coming in, without even reading what's on there, if you're printing out two pieces of resume, just put it on both hands, close your eyes, be in a calm state, and like, hey, which one just seems brighter, or which one feels like there's more positive weight? It's just a really simple exercise, and it's weird because you've never probably done it before,
yeah,
but it's going into a mental gym. Another way to start exercising, you got to pick up the weight, and it's going to feel weird the first rep, right?
yeah,
But then this is just one way for people to start understanding, am I more visual, am I more hearing, whatever it is, because you gotta be able to try and have the open-mindedness to try to understand how do you best hone in that intuition part, as long as you're allowing your emotions to flow, right?
yep, exactly. That's funny that you say that because that like Bridget does this. Like she has this thing where she can just see like a picture, like a photo of somebody, and she'll just tune in and she'll immediately know like the issues that they're going through, how they
Yeah.
it's crazy. I'm like, I can't do that yet, but like that's great. Like to me, I'm just like
It's a mastery
it
level,
amazes me.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So here's an interesting question. What is a common myth about your field of expertise?
Wow, that's a great question, Ben. I believe that the common myth here, especially in this world of personal and self-help, spiritual development, manifestation, just there's this myth that we have to be positive all the time, right? And it's positive 100% of the time, always positive, always positive. And what we say is to stop forcing positivity,
Hmm.
right? And I used to say, oh, stop being positive all the time, but it's more about stop forcing positivity. And what I mean by that is that we are human beings. We're here to experience all emotions, right? There's cycles. There's something called the universal law of rhythm, which means there's cycles in everything, right? In
Hmm.
real estate cycles, economic cycles, but there's ups and downs. And the same thing with emotions and energy, right? We're gonna feel joy and happiness, and then we're gonna feel sad and angry, and
Right.
so in this world of always be positive, there's this meme. I don't know if you've seen it, Ben, but where it's like a picture and there's like a smiling face on the outside, but then underneath that, there's an angry face, and underneath that, there's a sad face. And all the way in the end, there's like a little small, like child crying, right? And that just represents we have this smile that we're showing to the world, but internally, there's all this conflict and quote unquote negativity or negative emotions that we haven't dealt with because we're always told to be positive all the time. It's kind of like if anybody has ever worked with retail, where the customer's always right. You always have to smile no matter what. And I don't believe that that's healthy because we have to allow ourselves to feel those emotions, the anger, the sadness, the fear, even if they're not like the happy emotions.
Hmm.
And I love how you say it, Ben, where emotion is just energy in motion. And when we don't allow ourselves to fully feel, then those emotions can get stuck and they can get trapped literally in our energy fields, in our bodies, which can lead to manifest into physical illnesses or relationship issues or financial issues.
what I'm hearing from you is, there's a seasonality in really everything in life, and it also is specific here to emotions because you can't have autumn without first going through summer, right?
Exactly.
That's actually a nod to the 500 days of summer, right?
Right.
But I mean, there's seasonality. You can't have spring before going through winter. And what I'm hearing from you is there are times where you do need to put your happy face on, but it's what I'm hearing is that you don't have to put your happy face on all the time because without really being true to yourself and feeling the emotions that your body or soul wants to feel, suppressing that or just putting it away in a certain corner, that's going to manifest itself in a different way later on in life. And so I guess my question to that then is for someone that might be stuck in a lower point in their life, if they're going through something in a situation where they're just feeling low, what we're saying isn't necessarily about just staying in that low point forever, right?
No.
But
Right.
at the same time, when is the right moments to then either be positive or even just be neutral, right? Just be
Sure.
in the moment. Like what will be some tips you can share to clarify that point of, because I agree with you in a context that being positive all the time isn't necessarily being true to yourself. But
Mhm.
going to the very far other extreme, what would then be a right kind of midway point or balance with that? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, Ben. And that's a great follow-up question too. And first off, I just want to clarify. Yeah, it's. I believe it's essential and it's important to have a positive mindset and a positive outlook on life. Like knowing that things will work out. Like I believe that's as a core, it's essential for that. And when I'm saying don't force that positivity, meaning like I've worked with a lot of clients who they skip a step and go, oh, like because they think, oh, everything's going to be all right. But then there's one part it's almost like lying to yourself in a way, like it's like I sometimes say this with affirmations, right? Where I love affirmations, but when you say something that doesn't align with your heart, it's like you say, I'm rich, or I'm happy, and inside you don't, then it's kind of like you're lying to yourself. And
Mm.
I think that's where the gap is. So I just want to clarify that. I think it's important to have a positive mindset and have a positive outlook on life in general. Now, to answer your question, but there are some people when they're in this like state of depression or they're stuck in it and they just want to complain to complain. Like there's some people that they just like to complain. You give them a solution and they don't want to try it and they keep going that. Then for them, I would suggest staying like, okay, let's see if we could bring it to neutral. Can we bring it to neutrality? Like, first of all, do they want to get out of that? Right? Do they want to get out of the depression? Do they want to get out of the hurt? Right? And if that's a yes, then okay, let's bring it up to, we don't need to be happy, but let's bring it to neutrality and let's bring it to curiosity. And so
Mm.
ask that part of us that's upset and angry and depressed, why? Right? Why are why am I upset about this? Why am I sad about this? Or get to understand themselves a little more because this is what I typically see working with people. This is a client just messaged me the other day and we worked on it. He's like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good 90% of the time, positive, amazing, awesome, lighter. But there's still that kind of 10% that is still have those negative thoughts and this and that. But I'm just trying to replace it. So that's what I mean by don't be
Mm.
forcing that positive. He's like, I'm just trying to replace it with positivity. And it's like, no. Don't force that positivity. Let's look at that. Like, what part of you, like, what did you say? What were the thoughts? What were the feelings? What was going on? Let's look into that so that we can shift it.
Using my own language of what I just heard from you, Jonathan, is that if 80, 90% of your day is generally happy, but then you have that 10 or 20% where you have either a low point or where you're feeling sad or whatever it may be, rather than thinking of it as, well, what do I do to replace that to make it 100% positivity? It's more of, well, your body and your emotions and your soul is probably signaling something that it's making them feel that way. So approach it with a curious mind of why is it that you feel that way, right? Just to
Mhm.
be with yourself, to feel it, but then just to ask different questions of, well, what's the root cause of that? And if you're able to dig one level deeper to understand that about yourself, then it's going through a process of having the awareness, being able to be with it, but then also letting it pass. So you're not holding on to it to get you to that level of neutrality that you're talking about. And then once you get
Mhm.
into that stage, then that's priming yourself to then, okay, then what can you do with a positive mindset in general to move then to positive? Because you can't just go, I think I mentioned it before in my previous episode that when someone tells you, turn that frown upside down, it's like that just probably going to anger someone even more, right? You just
Yeah,
can't, like, it's
yeah,
like what, like in that anger state or in that sad state, you can't just all of a sudden flip the switch and all of a sudden become positive. That's not really I would argue the most productive way. But if
right,
you can at least be with it and then all of a sudden go to that next stage of neutrality, and then from
right.
there be in a calm state and then move then to positive, you have a better chance of actually taking those extra steps than it is. Well, I wouldn't even say extra steps. Those are probably more a natural steps than it
Yeah,
is from doing a 180.
right, right, exactly. And it's just to kind of rephrase what you said there, Ben, it's instead of judging or blaming or criticizing yourself for having those thoughts, let's get to neutrality and be curious about it. That's it. Because if you blame something, you go into what's called your reptilian brain. We call it the blame brain,
Hmm.
right? Which is the survival mode brain. And from that place, you have no compassion, you have nothing, you're just trying to survive. And it's all like instinct, I guess. And there's no curiosity in that. This person followed it, and you're blaming yourself. So, but when you get to neutrality and curiosity, you go, I wonder where that thought came from. I wonder what this emotion wants to tell me. If there was a message for me, what would that be? That gets you to that next layer deeper. And that next, or what is this feeling, or what is that thought? Like, what does that remind me of? And that can get you to that next phase. And another thing that I share with my clients is and this is a really interesting question. I'll ask them, like, well, what if, right? Because everybody wants peace and joy and love and happiness, right? They want to experience that. And I always say, well, what if the peace and love and joy and freedom that you want to experience is the only way to that is underneath all the anger and the fear and the sadness that you do not want to feel? What if that was the one thing that you had to do to experience what you want?
So
And you
say
could
say
do
that
it.
one more time. So you're saying, what if what you want is to be able to experience those series of emotions rather than just something singular? Is that
So
what you mean?
here's how I do it. How I do it, like usually when I'll show a slide, and it's like this big, like, that little poop emoji. And it's like the joy and the peace and the happiness that we all want to experience. What if it's buried underneath through the crap?
Hmm.
You got to go through that, because people come, I've done everything, like, especially in marriages, like, oh, we've gone to counseling, we've done therapy, we've done these retreats, and we've done this and we've done that. And it works for a little bit, but it never lasts. And I say, oh, you tried so, and they basically say, I've tried everything. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, have you ever tried feeling through the anger and the fear and the sadness that you are avoiding?
Ooh,
Because
I felt that because okay, so what I'm hearing from you then, Jonathan, is that sometimes if you're going through the emotions, it's one thing to stay positive, but what I'm hearing from you is if you don't let yourself experience some of the emotions that wants to be able to surface, then you're not really going through the transformation needed to break through and to really experience, learn from it, and then ultimately let it go. Because if you're just always seeing it and in a sight of the emotion you're trying to avoid, you immediately take a U-turn and you avoid it, then that's not stopping it from wanting to resurface somewhere else later on. Is that another way to say it?
yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because
Interesting.
here's what typically happens, then. This is what happens, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to use the relationship analogy, but this goes for anything.
Yeah.
Okay. But if when somebody gets mad, their spouse or their partner, right, husband or wife, they start to yell or they ignore them, whatever the situation is, person starts to feel angry or sad. And instead of feeling those feelings, like sitting with it, and they go, okay, I need to do something about this. I got to do something about this. So they sign up for counseling, they sign up for therapy, they sign up for something, right? To fix it, right? They do something to try to fix it externally, usually.
Hmm.
Okay. It's, same thing with I work with these very successful entrepreneurs who make a lot of money, right? But the relationships are not good. But they're like, because what they're used to is when they were young, something happened. Somebody told them they weren't good enough. They weren't going to amount to anything. And they had this, like, I'm going to prove you wrong. So they went out and did everything they could to become successful in society's terms, but they're not happy internally. And now they're like, what do I do now? What do I do now? Everything that I used to do doesn't work. Like, money can't solve this. I can't buy my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tend to, and that's the healthy way. That's actually a healthy way, is to like be successful. The unhealthy way is you start to feel stuff and then you want to numb it with alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever vices that you may have, right? So it's about allowing those feelings when they start to come up, sit with them and allow them to come up and allow yourself to feel them. And it's very counterintuitive for most people.
Yeah, because it's sometimes people want to be able to avoid the pain, but sometimes pain in of itself is trying to signal something to you, where if you don't pay attention to that signal, then you might miss the communication or lesson you're supposed to learn.
Exactly.
The one thing I just want my audience to understand too is that you don't want to be sitting in that pain too long either, right? It's not like you're moping in that lower state and all of a sudden you're going down this vicious cycle and this spiral, because that's very counterproductive for that. And so I think the distinction I wanted to make is that, yes, I think what we're saying is to be able to feel what your body wants you to feel, but at the same time, if you're being curious, if you ask yourself why is it, and you just let yourself experience it, usually it'll just take you through this phase, but then eventually, once it's expressed itself, the energy will just kind of pass through. You're not holding on to it. Yeah. That's the thing.
Exactly. And just to add on to that then is, and I don't know the full, this is, I learned from my boss and my mentor, and he says that, emotions, when you fully allow them, like the hormones, the actual hormones, the chemical hormones, it only takes 90 seconds to process through. If you allow it fully, right? And there's studies and there's science behind this. Now, here's the thing. Why do people get trapped? Because they're not allowing themselves to fully feel all the way. They start to feel, they may even cry some tears, but then okay, no, stop. It's a weak, right? Because, showing vulnerability, it's a weakness. I can't cry. You notice how everybody, when they start to show emotion, they apologize for it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, why are you sorry for feeling? Why are you sorry for being a human being? I teach people a process that helps them feel it 100% all the way through. And that's one of my specialties, is helping people go through that.
I think I mentioned this before. I would love to interview Bridget about this, but the V word, vulnerability, right? Yeah. It's almost society cast it as a dirty V word. And it's like, it's not, because it's, there are situations where, depending on where people are in their life, they feel they have to be strong, because that's what's supporting my family and that's what's supporting, my loved ones. And I have to always have this front face of being strong. But if you have to be that 24/7, there's times where you're not even allowing the vulnerability of yourself to be able to surface in the right moments, then that can really put a lot of stress to you mentally, physically later on in life, right? And it's a matter of, do you have the space with the right people, or even with, giving your space for yourself to feel vulnerable? There's times where you might need to let that emotion of crying let out, because a healthier way to express itself, other than it manifesting to something else that might be a physical ailment.
Exactly. I think about, so there are some socially acceptable places to really allow, let that out. But imagine like going to somebody's funeral, like somebody who close, passed away, and imagine like you want to release it, but imagine like, no, I gotta be strong. And if you hold that in, what happens afterwards? I have a relative that did this, and he held it in when my grandfather passed, and there's a lot of things he can't let go of because of that. There's a couple of metaphors that might help your audience to just shift their perspective on emotions. So the first one is, I look at emotions like toddlers.
Hmm.
right? Like for those of you guys who have kids, and you've got you have a couple kids,
Yeah.
like right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like anger, fear. So typically, what we do in Western society is we look at the four core emotions I work with is anger, fear, sadness, and joy. And
Anger,
anger
anger, fear, sadness, and joy.
and joy.
Got it.
And we tend to like, hey, let's just hang out with joy. Let's just go for joy. That's everything we want is joy, 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 joy. And when anger, fear, and sadness start to come up, we kind of shut them out. And if you have kids and like a little toddler, like what happens when, your toddler goes, hey, daddy, I just want your attention. I want your attention. And you go, nope, right? They don't just go, hey, I'm gonna go take a nap and go ahead and do your thing. Yeah. No, they get louder. And then we just, okay, they're getting louder. So let me put them in the closet and close the door. And now they're banging on the door and they get louder. And then let me put some headphones on to block it out. Right. So what we do, but what happens when we just pay, hey, sweetie, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. And they share whatever they need to say or express. And then they're fine now. That's the first kind of metaphor or visual that can help people understand or shift their perspective on emotions.
Yeah.
And then
I just want to add something there too, Jonathan.
yeah,
Like
yeah, go
as I
for
was
it.
listening to you, the imagery I get is very similar to that movie Inside Out. Because it's like
Exactly.
joy, and it's like, why does the orb have to be 100% joy? It's like, how is it? I don't want to ruin the movie, guys. If you haven't
Yeah,
seen Inside Out, go watch it. It
it's a great
is
movie.
such a great movie. It's
Really good.
very very relevant to really our conversation today too. But you can have multicolored orbs. It doesn't have to be 100% one way or the other. And that's imagery I get when I listen to you and describing that first analogy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's just we have I think we have all been like we are all masters. Like every human in the world, we are all masters at creating complex mechanisms to not feel. Like we're master not feelers of like like literally
I'm
that's
only laughing because it's so true. It's like I think about, my 30-year-old self is like, man, yeah, like it's because whether it's, culturally or your family or whatever it is, society has this way of like quieting that ability instead of actually not just honoring it, but strengthening how to really
mm,
feel, right? And you kind of have to go through life to really get to the point that where we are in our life, in our career, to realize like, man, imagine the power we started this when we were 20. You know what I mean?
true,
Yeah. But
true.
it's okay. Everything has a purpose, everything has a reason, and it's all good, right?
Right, absolutely. And then,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and then the second one I want to share real quick is in our physical bodies, we have arteries, right? We have our heartbeats and pumps blood throughout our bodies. And if we're unhealthy, we're not exercising or eating very unhealthy, then we can get like these blood, like clogged arteries, right? Which can cause heart attacks and cardiovascular disease and all sorts of stuff. Well, the way emotions work, the way I see it at least, is like when we don't feel through our emotions and they get stuck and they get trapped, right? Like we grow up, we experience traumas, and then we kind of hold on to them and they get stuck in our body. The way I see it is when you feel through your emotions, you are actually able to dissolve those. So,
Hmm.
right? And if you don't, then they're going to stay clogged. And it's just like your energy or your chi, right? Like Eastern philosophy called chi, like it gets stuck. And when it gets stuck, it can manifest into physical illnesses, ailments. It can manifest into relationship issues, financial issues, right? All sorts of stuff,
All the above.
right? So
Yeah.
that all
Yeah.
the above, and that's why it's important because a lot of people, like, why do I need to feel emotions? Like, I feel them. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel whatever. Why do I need to really dive deeper into this? Well, this is why, right? Like to be able to release those, ooh, then it opens up space and so much more can come into your life.
Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, the only thing I would just say is, as a disclaimer, look, we both are not doctors, right? And
Right.
but having that said, we've the work that we do and the people that we serve, we just seen enough patterns to understand that whatever way that works for you to be able to, in a trusted source, be able to have an open mind and get the emotions flowing, right? That could be done through therapy. That could be done through a psychologist. That could be done through energy, healer work, whatever it is. Find one that just really resonates with you, right? Because everyone has their own vibration energy and you're attracted to a certain different type of energy, right? But I get you 100%, which actually leads into perfectly my next question. If someone has the awareness that their IA, their internal alternator, or using your words, Jonathan, it's the heart body, right?
Mhm.
If they realize they have the awareness that it's not working effectively and they want to feel more emotions or at least get it more flowing so they don't have those clogged arteries, so to speak, right? Emotional arteries.
Yep.
How would one determine or vet out if an energy worker is the right one for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it kind of just goes back to what you just said before is finding something for somebody that resonates. So a very easy, simple way is to, when you're talking to this person, right? When you're like, they may say the right words and they sound great, but you want to go with your feeling. You have that awareness of, okay, is this somebody like, is this the highest, best person to work with? Do I feel like I really want to work with this person, right? And just notice. Now, this is going to be this does take some practice, but notice what your body says, right?
Yeah.
So start to notice, like instead of thinking the answer, feel the answer, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole different thing. It's almost like let your body, you know,
I I get you 100% because it's what I share with people that are really good with words can speak very articulately or be able to say things really sweet so that you know it's just things that you want to hear.
mhm,
And that can mask their intentions. It's really hard to lie about your energy. And if you exercise your detection of positive, good intentions or negative intentions, that energy you can't, if you know how to detect it, if you know how to sense it, that you just can't lie, right? And that goes to what the point where you're saying is you got to be able to feel it, which I agree. I think part of the challenge for people that have still are trying to activate their internal alternator to start feeling, they might not have yet the sense and direction to feel it. And so
mhm.
if they're sort of in the early stages where they haven't practiced and strengthened that muscle yet, what would be one thing you can share that they
Okay.
can do?
So there's, hang on here. Let me just
It's a hard
pull up some.
question. I
It's a
get
hard
it.
question.
Yeah, yeah. But I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
one that I really would like my audience to understand.
Yeah, it depends on where they're at with feeling. Like, what are their thoughts? So I'd have to ask, like, what are their thoughts about? I'd ask myself, like, hey, what are your thoughts about feelings and emotion? Do you believe that feeling or showing any emotion is a weakness, first of all, right? Are you willing to allow yourself to feel? And those are some very, very simple questions to ask yourself first to see if any of those work. Like, if you're like, hey, I want to feel, I really want to, but I don't know. I'm just stuck. I can't feel anything. Okay. You can also ask yourself a question and journal about this, right? Dive a little deeper or dive deep into this, which is like, hey, what are you afraid of if you allow yourself to feel? What's, the worst thing that can happen? You allow yourself to feel, oh man, I might get hurt again, or I don't want to feel that pain, or that's just weak, or whatever it is. Let that come up and, you know, keep asking, okay, so what's the worst thing that happens if you're perceived as weak? Right. And then when you get to like a deep or a root belief, and I don't know if you use this or not, but I learned this from Byron Katie, which I call it the belief breaker question, is when you reach a belief that's a core belief and you're like, wait, that's a belief I have. You test it by just asking, like, hey, do I know that this belief is 100% true? Right? I ask it like, so for example, oh, if I feel, then I'm going to get hurt. And if I get hurt, I'm going to be sad and I'm going to, right? And the belief will end up somewhere along the lines of like, hey, if I feel this, then I'm going to end up dying alone somehow, right? You keep going down deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. You'll get to some form of I'll die or I'll be alone or something like that. And when you get there, you ask that question like, hey, do I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that like 100% guarantee that if I allow myself to feel that I'm going to die alone? And it's going to be a no, right? Most likely it's going to be a no. Like, no, I don't know that for sure. Okay, so it's just a perception, it's just a belief. And then you can allow yourself to change that. And then when you change that, then you can tune in and allow yourself to feel again. Another way that you can kind of start testing things is muscle testing. And Ben, I think I don't know if you've mentioned this on to your audience yet, but Muscle testing is another way to do it, but if people don't know how to muscle test for themselves, the easiest way to do it is to just stand. Now, some people say to face north. I don't necessarily do that. I just kind of stand, and if you close your eyes and you just say yes, and it'll your notice your body will naturally go forward, and then if you say no, your back will most likely fall back.
Mm,
That is by far the simplest method,
got it.
and it's a good way to practice just to feel your body, just to be
Yeah.
like, okay, so
Yeah.
and what I mean by yes is like that's a affirmation, something that's true. You'll fall forward, and then if it's so, you can say like, hey, my name is Jonathan Liu, and I'll fall forward, right? And
Right.
that's a way
Right.
to test your beliefs and build your intuitive skills.
Yeah. I get what you're saying because, one of the modalities that both my wife and I have went through is Psyche. And so there is an element of muscle testing. And so I would just say this. I think because muscle testing is a powerful way to communicate with your subconscious, really, of what they believe in. That's one of the ways to use that method. I would just add on to what you just shared. The intention is to figure out what language is your subconscious signaling to you is a yes or positive versus a no or negative. So whether it's falling forward or backwards, whether it's falling left and right, as long as there's consistency on when you say your name versus saying a different name, when you think of something you love or not. And like you're doing these tests to for you to just understand what is considered a affirmative or yes versus what's a no or negative. And when we have that distinction and you can understand and make that distinction, then hey, you've established a communication of how it is. And then now it's being able to understand, well, is this energy, is this person professional or energy worker, is this the right one for me? Well, that's one way to start it, is like kind of what you're saying, is to muscle test or to be able to just feel what does your gut say, right? Like it's
Yeah,
usually a very subtle signal. It's not very loud or vocal. It doesn't come with anger, right? That's
right,
usually ego, but it's
right.
usually very subtle. But it's that quieting your mind, because when you do quiet your mind, you be able to pick up those signals a lot easier versus having a wind tunnel going 40 miles per hour. It's like, wait, which one am I supposed to catch, right?
Absolutely. And that's the other thing that's super simple, anyone can do, but also one of the hardest things
Yeah.
is to quiet your mind. If you can literally sit and quiet your mind, let everything fall,
Right.
and then allow the things to come up. And it's gonna be like, why am I sitting here? What am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Like all of that stuff. And you know what's kind of crazy is you'll start to feel, because underneath, once those things start coming up, then you'll start to feel it. You've just been used to like holding it down, that you don't. So like literally
Yeah.
just sitting there and, for lack of a better word, doing nothing, right? It's not doing nothing because you're actually sitting in your being with yourself.
I get it. I get it. The imagery I get too, and I shared this before, is that, if you're sitting in your car, you've got the music blasting, you've got the windshield, you know what I mean? Like a bit blinded, and then you can't even feel your legs. It's like you're driving blind, you can't even hear, you can't even feel, right? And so what you're sharing with me, it's like, look, just sit still in your car, turn off the music, just enjoy the scenery, just sit still. Because when you do that, the feelings will start, sensations will come up, or you'll be able to hear something, or you'll be able to collect the thoughts, because otherwise it's just too many distractions going on. And you need to be able to do that natural reset. And the more you practice, the more you do, right? Meditation doesn't have to just be silence. It could just
Right.
be breathing work. There's so many methods. You just have to find a method that works for you. Because, for me, if I were to sit still for 30 minutes, I'm knocked out. I just fall asleep. So I know, okay, so meditation of completely sitting still in 30 minutes, this doesn't work for me. But, the exercises I've gone through, which is like, when you're in a shower, just imagine yourself having all this gunk and like, quote unquote mud all over you. It's just let the water wash away, just be in a present moment. And it's almost like you're not turning your phone and answering any messages. You're just really just being still in the moment and just breathing.
Yeah.
That's how you start to quiet your mind, right? It's just finding whatever method that's effective for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, Ben. And you said it right there. The other one is breathing, like
Yeah.
breath, just focusing on the breath. That's like deep. You do those deep belly
Right.
breaths, like,
Right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Awesome. Okay. So, Jonathan, you shared something with me on our last call that I really resonated with, which is that hurt does not heal over time.
Right.
Hurt does not heal over time. Tell me more about your thoughts behind this statement that you shared before I share
Right.
mine. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So like, there's this. saying, right? And I used to believe this, is that time heals everything. That's what I thought, right? That's what I thought. Enough time, right? And especially after like a breakup, they would say, "Oh, you just didn't wait enough," right? But I found that to be false because if you think about something, right, it's just time numbs it, and we can put it out of our mind for a long time until something else triggers it, right? But if you think about like I would, especially with relationships, it's like think about that person that hurt you 20 years ago. Are you over it? Like, right? Most likely, if you think about that, and like, oh, and you could remember like step by step, blow by blow, every single thing they did wrong to you, right? Then that means it has not truly healed, and you have not truly forgiven or gotten past it, right? So what I found is in order to truly heal something, a trauma, we have to go back to that point of origin of where that was and feel through it and give that kind of young, I call it our younger selves, right? Because usually it happens when we're younger. Usually the big traumas happen when we're, little kids. And we have to go back and allow those parts of us, those little frozen, I call them like I imagine like as we grow up and we have these traumas, we freeze in time
Hmm.
because those emotions, like, right, just imagine a little 3, 4, 5 year old playing, doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, let's say they knock something over, right, and they break something, and in comes mom or dad yelling like, "What the hell are you doing?" Blah, 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 right, and they have no idea. A 4 year old doesn't know what the heck happened. They were just playing, and all of a sudden they get in trouble and they freeze. They're in shock. They have no idea. They get hit, right? Maybe they get slapped or spanked or yelled at, and they're just like, "Oh my God," and it gets trapped and frozen in that moment.
Hmm.
So as they grow older, we carry on to that and we think, "Oh, as we get older, it'll be fine. I'll get over it." We don't think about it. But then they experience something else that reminds them of, "Oh, I'm a failure or I'm bad." When I am happy, I get yelled at.
Hmm.
When I go for what I want, I get hit. So we grow up with that. So therefore, so we got to go back and we got to allow that part of us, that little frozen younger part of us, know that, hey, it's okay. You let them feel whatever they need to feel, whether they need to cry or scream or shout or whatever. And then you give them the love and nurturing that they needed at that time that they didn't receive. You get to give that. It's kind of like you get to be the inner parent to your own inner child, right? And give them that love. And then when they're okay, then it's all good. Then they kind of become unfrozen and they right let it go, and then
I
you can move forward. Otherwise it's just stuck.
I get it. Yeah. And to add on what you said, Jonathan, it's, when I think about, I'm getting goosebumps because I think this is what happened. When I was sharing my story of what happened to me in middle school in that episode of Intuition, I think that's the one that I worked on with you.
Mm.
Time doesn't necessarily let it fade. It might be more out of sight, out of mind, but it's still always going to be there. But until you can really build up the courage and energy to confront it, to be with it, and then it'll just dissipate, or it'll be able to replace it with something, with a different emotion that to your words, it's frozen in time. So you have an emotion frozen in that snapshot. Well, what if we replace that with something different? Right.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
change, what I think it's really great about working with you and Bridget, it's that change really comes from within me. It's not, you're just helping to facilitate the process, but it's not like, hey, eat this magic pill, or hey, listen to this and you're going to be cured. It's not like that. It's just more facilitating to go within yourself and to understand, because no one knows those moments like you do. Right.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
And for folks that might be unsure of energy work or whatever it may be, it's, hey, your energy can shift just like
yeah,
that. You can think about one incident you happened in childhood or in adolescence or whatever it is, take you in a moment and you'll remember vividly what you were wearing, who did what, who said what, right? All of a sudden you hear that whether there's suppressed anger, your voice changes.
yeah, yeah,
That's real for them
yeah,
because of that frozen in time. And it's like,
yes,
imagine having the power to change that. Holy
yes,
cow, then that's really where the magic can really happen. And so So yeah, no, I get it. And that's why when you said that time doesn't
Yeah,
heal.
time doesn't heal everything. So there's a thing that says time heals everything. That's an old
Right,
belief that
right.
no longer works. And just to add on one little thing that I love that you, yeah, that transformation, right, of changing that energy. One of my mentors, or I worked with this guy. He was a very powerful energy healer, and he always said, "Everything is energy, and all energy can be transformed." Like,
Hmm.
like that's and it's so like I didn't quite understand the first time I heard it, but then I was like, oh man, like that makes so much sense. That's all we're doing. So it's not like we're getting rid of it necessarily, right? Because a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, like they have this drive, and a lot of times they kind of take this anger and it kind of turns into like motivation for them, like that's their drive, and that works up until a certain point because you're still using anger, right? It's like you're using anger as fuel to drive you. And it works and it works and it works and you become very successful and you make a lot of money and that's great. But then if they're not happy and fulfilled in the rest of their lives, then what has to happen is they get to transform that anger into love. And now they can still move forward. It's just a different fuel. So that energy
No, I
transformation is amazing.
I get it. And this is to reinforce what I shared about in the fourth episode, which is that look, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form into another. And when I share the quote, it's like emotional energy works exactly the same way. And it's kind of exactly what you're talking about right now. I get it. And so what is one or two action steps that you would recommend our audience that they can do to open up or activate their emotions in a gradual way?
So the first step, I would call it awareness, right? Is just to be aware of how they're feeling. And not just like an emotion. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, is that am I mad or sad or whatever, but just notice what they're feeling in their bodies. So closing your eyes and just being aware, right? Just being aware, like just noticing, if you're outside, you feel a breeze, or noticing like, hey, I have like a little tightness in my chest. I don't know why, but I just do, or whatever it is. Just noticing their body. Like that's the first step of feeling is just to be aware. Another thing that they can do is notice when they get triggered. So even though a lot of people will say like, I can't feel, but there are trigger moments when hey, when somebody says something and you get that like, oh, mother ever, right? Like, or like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Or even if it's a trigger for sadness, right? Or whatever, notice it. Just be aware of it. And I usually tell people to do like a shadow journal where they have a journal and they can just write out whatever they're feeling, whatever it is. So that's one.
So and that speaks to what I mentioned a lot in my episodes, which is that it's a CL method, right? The
The
CAL method,
cow.
right?
Absolutely.
Calming, awareness, and a language. So
Yep.
it's that a awareness is when you're in a calm state, what comes up, and again, just lean in on what feels right for you. Is it a visual? Is it auditory? Is it something in your physical body? Any of your senses? What's happening with
Exactly.
you in that moment, right?
And then, okay. So the second thing I would suggest and give it a shot is right. So there's all sorts of different types of meditations and things like that, but something that's really quick and easy that I started to use very early on was what I call the gift of love exercise.
Hmm.
And it's simply like you close your eyes and you think about, or even if you have, it's even better if you have like videos of this, but I want you just to think about all the things that make you happy or joyful or warm or feeling love. So that can be like, hey, or when you graduated college, or when your children were born, or when you got that job that you wanted, or all the things, the people in your life that you love, that vacation you took, the honeymoon, your wedding, like anything, like you want to start compiling all of these things that you love, and imagine them all coming into like your hands, like you're holding out your hands like this. So you can't see me, but if you're holding your hands out, kind of like you're holding like a ball or something, and just imagine all those good things filling up into your hands, all that love, all that fun, all those celebrations, all of that warmth and joy. And then you just grab that and you just kind of take it in and put it into your heart, and you just let it go into your heart, into your body, let it flow all the way through, down through your legs, your knees, down your shins to the toes, and just all through your body, arms, hands, fingers, and you just let that, and you just do this for like 30 seconds to like a minute, and then you just sit with it and allow yourself. And that's another way to tap into feeling, at least like the feelings that you want to feel.
That's beautiful, man. No, I feel like when we did the hands, it's like the Allstate hands, right?
The all-state
Right?
hands, yeah, there
The
you go.
Allstate hands, and then you're bundling your love and your emotions and experiences that made you feel love into this orb, and you're just basically having it, gradually absorb into your chest. That's the sensation that and that feeling, which is really just a beautiful visualization, but exercise, because that will make you feel something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mental exercise of being able to activate that.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and so switching gears, Jonathan, if we had a time machine, if we had a DeLorean, right? What is one thing you would tell yourself if you had an ability to travel back 10 years ago?
Okay.
Share with your younger self.
That's a great question. What was I doing then? All right. So at that time, I had just got married. That was 2011, right? Yeah. So I just got married. Honestly, the thing I would tell myself that time is appreciate.
Hmm.
Appreciate everything you have. Be grateful for all the support and the love and the friends and Bridget and all the opportunities you're going to receive. And honestly, as far as actions, like I don't think I would change a thing of that. I would just say the one thing is to appreciate,
Hmm.
right? And that's another thing people can do is like have a gratitude journal, and they can write out what they're grateful for. And what I like to do is I like to write a few things I'm grateful for, and then really kind of do that gift of love thing where I just kind of think about it, or I'll write like I'm so grateful for my daughter, and I'll play a video and just watch it, and you just let yourself feel those emotions. But yeah, that's what I would tell my 27, 28-year-old self.
Yeah, no, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like you would have told your younger self that second step that you just shared, which is, that daily exercise of love or daily exercise of gratitude. And it just takes like a minute, right? It
Yeah.
just takes just doing that and feeling it. That's practicing your feeling and emotion. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, because I think at that time, like I had everything, everything worked out perfectly fine. It's just my mental state was I was stressed and worried, and like more. I noticed that whenever I am struggling or stressing or worried, and I just go back to gratitude, it always like everything just always opens up.
Hmm.
Something that this guy Ed, he's this energy healer, very powerful. He said, gratitude opens your heart,
Hmm.
right? Gratitude opens your heart. And so when that and they say that the heart is like I don't quote me on this, but the heart is like 50,000 times stronger than the mind or something like that. As
Hmm.
far as right, like it's magnetically strong, right? It's an electromagnetic vibration versus the mind is more electrical.
Yeah.
And so from the heart, yeah, gratitude opens the heart, which allows more energy to flow through.
I feel
Yeah,
it, man. I
yeah,
feel like
I
you're
feel it.
saying
Yeah,
that.
I
Yeah,
feel it
no, I
too. I
feel
love.
it. And I love it because that's where transformation happens,
Yeah.
right? You can have the aha moments in your mind, and those are what I call the inner breakthroughs, but you've got to follow up with actions to make it outer breakthroughs, but to have the courage to take the actions when you feel it, holy cow, that's what's going to get you moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to
Mm-hmm.
be able to feel it. So that's beautiful, man. Jonathan, you're such a positive light and energy. I really appreciate you
Thanks.
sharing your superpower with us today. And really, more power to you as you continue being such an awesome healer and light worker.
Thank
Where
you.
can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so if they want to find some more information, they can go to the powerfuluniversity.com, and that's the powerful YO University. So yeah, a little play on that word, but yeah, the powerfuluniversity.com.
Got it. Okay. And I'm going to include all of your information on our show notes. So be able to reach you. We'll definitely include that as well. Jonathan, again, thank you so much for joining Boom Vision Podcast today. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the work that you've done and helped transform in me and my journey. And, in the near future, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And it was a pleasure. Thank you to everybody listening. And it's really an honor for me to be here and to be able to share. And
All
thank you,
right.
Ben.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Jonathan Liu. There's a couple of great insights I got from today's interview, but the one that sticks out the most for me is that you don't have to force yourself to be positive. Don't get me wrong, it's really important to have a positive growth mindset, but at the same time, forcing yourself to be positive 100% of the time can be counterproductive. The universal law of rhythm exists, and when you're feeling the highs and lows of your current chapter in your life, rather than suppressing, avoiding, or replacing your negative emotions you might be feeling, just be with it. Feel it. And ask yourself why you may be feeling those emotions. What's the message or lesson it's trying to communicate with you? By fully feeling it and asking your inner child why you feel this way, you're allowing your inner child that's frozen in time a chance to express itself. And when you give that emotion the space to fully express, it will feel it's being heard and can dissolve. This may help you get to a neutral state of mind, which creates a safer environment for yourself to take that next step of becoming more positive. The final takeaway I like to share is that if you allow your emotions to flow, you are allowing your mind body to connect with your heart body, and ultimately connecting with your soul body, where your soul GPS resides. By allowing your heart to freely flow, you'll be able to learn how to trust and strengthen your intuition that can serve you well in life. You've got this. Until next time, folks, be kind to yourself, be in the light, be you. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Boom Vision podcast. If you'd like to find out more about me and this podcast, head over to benjaminyeh.com. That's spelled BenjaMinyeh.com. If you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.